I remember the clinking of glasses that night, the sound sharp and careless, like laughter after a cruel joke. He lifted his drink, smiling wide enough for everyone to see. "I sold your little cabin for $60,000, he said. His family erupted in cheers, as if it were a victory. His mother raised her glass, his brother laughed too loudly, and then, with that same mocking smirk he always wore when he wanted to make me feel small, his brother added, "The money for this dinner? It's from the cabin sale. At least one meal's covered." I didn't say a word. I just watched the bubbles in my champagne rise and burst. Quietly, softly, the same way my trust in him did. That cabin wasn't just property. It was history. My father's callous hands in the wood, my mother's laughter still echoing faintly in the walls. It was the scent of pine and the sound of a door that creaked the same way it had since I was a child. It was mine, my inheritance, my memory, my one untouched piece of home before he came into the picture. When I met him, he was charming in that dangerous, disarming way people like him often are. The kind of charm that feels safe until you realize it's already burned you. He spoke of partnership and equality, of building dreams together. I believed every word because love, at its most intoxicating, makes you stupid, and I was fluent in that particular kind of foolishness back then. But slowly, the language between us began to change. He started asking, "Why do you keep everything separate?" And then, "It's not fair if your name's on everything and mine isn't." Love became negotiation. Then negotiation became ownership. And finally, ownership became betrayal. One morning, I noticed papers on his desk. Papers that weren't mine. The deed to my cabin. His signature right where mine should have been. The ink looked smug, almost proud of itself. I confronted him, softly at first. He brushed it off with that practice calm and said, "You're overreacting." I didn't ask again, but I checked, quietly, carefully. The sale had already gone through. Fake documents, forged signatures, and a buyer who turned out to be his friend's cousin. It wasn't just theft. It was a family project, a neat little operation. They thought I would break, that I'd cry, beg, or fall apart. They expected the soft-hearted version of me, the one they'd trained to keep quiet. But I smiled instead. Anger is loud. Revenge, though, revenge is silent. I stayed still long enough for him to relax, long enough for him to forget who I really was. He forgot that I have a law degree and a better poker face than anyone in that smug little dining room. So I began. The paper trail was my first weapon. He had used a scanned copy of my signature from our joint tax forms, a federal document. That made it a felony. The lawyer who'd processed the sale had skipped the notary requirement, which meant his license was dangling by a thread, too. I didn't need to scream. I just sent one email to the right investigator, with one attachment, the wrong version of the contract, the one with visible edits, metadata, timestamps, evidence that didn't just whisper fraud. It screamed it. And then I waited. The day it all started unraveling, I was there, sitting across from him at breakfast when his phone buzzed. The buyer's lawyer was on the line, yelling so loudly I could hear every word. "Why are the authorities at our office?" He froze. The color drained from his face. Slowly, he turned to me. I stirred my tea and said quietly, "Maybe you should take it outside." He did. He always did what I suggested, just never when it mattered. That evening, he came home pale, trembling, the arrogance finally stripped from his voice. "They're saying I committed fraud," he stammered. "You didn't. I didn't. Tell them, please." I tilted my head slightly. "Tell them what?" "Tell them I didn't mean to," he whispered. I leaned closer, my voice barely above a murmur. "You already told them." I said, "When you sign my name." The next week, everything collapsed. The funds were frozen. The buyer backed out. The investigation spread, touching his brother, his lawyer friend, every smug face that had laughed at that dinner table. When the authorities came to question him, they asked for my documentation. I handed them a neat, chronological file. Every forgery, every timestamp, every trace of their arrogance preserved like pressed flowers of deceit. When the officers left, he stared at me, hollow-eyed. "You destroyed me," he said. I smiled. Not cruelly, I replied, just honestly. Then, after a pause, I added, you sold yourself. I just made sure the receipt was public. In the end, the authorities seized his accounts. The sale was voided. The cabin came back to me, untouched, quiet, waiting. Now, when I go there, it's different. There's no bitterness, no ghosts, just wind brushing to the pine trees, and the sound of peace returning home. Sometimes, I light the old fireplace and pour myself a glass of wine, not to celebrate, but to remember, because revenge was never sweet. It was clean, and in its silence, I finally heard myself again.